Tonight, college crackdown. The administration's efforts to stamp out pro-Palestinian protest runs afoul with free speech advocates. And a new American pope, getting to know the Chicago-born leader of the largest denomination in the world. And he's back.
I was in charge, and he won, so, I take responsibility.
What former President Biden has to say about the election. Our panel is in the house and ready to weigh in on all this and more on tonight's Faith Nation. The art of the deal, from spending bills to a possible nuclear agreement with Iran. It's been a busy week of negotiations here in Washington. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation in Washington. I'm Caitlin Burke. To look back at the week that was and what lies ahead, our panel of experts, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody, editor and publisher of Inside Elections Nathan Gonzalez, and CBN News digital media host Raj Nair. Welcome, gentlemen. We are going to start this evening with David and Raj. The smoke cleared over Vatican City, revealing a new American pope. What do we know about Pope Leo, and can we expect him to follow in the footsteps of Pope Francis on social issues? David, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Well, thanks a lot for that complicated question right off the top, Caitlin. We have no clue at this point. We get a sense that on social issues, and when I mean social issues, I'm talking about climate change and immigration. He seems to be along the lines of Pope Francis, which is more of that progressive streak. But when it comes to the life issue, he said quite a few things that make you get a sense that he's actually very, very pro-life. And this just in, a pope should be pro-life. I mean, I don't think that should be a shocker to us, but it has been something that he has been very fervent about. So we'll see. I can tell you this, though. One of the lines that struck me were in past interviews, he's talked about how it's not about bishops, it's not about the church as much as it is about being a disciple and letting people know about Jesus. And that is refreshing, because that is indeed what it's all about.
Definitely. Raj, anything to weigh in on there?
Yeah, well, actually, CBN just posted a new article a few minutes ago talking about a quote that he just had. Let me read it. It's just a line or two. I think it's actually really pertinent. He says, "There are many settings in which Jesus, although appreciated as a man, is reduced to a kind of charismatic leader or Superman," which I actually thought was pretty interesting. The idea that a lot of Christians have this kind of lukewarm, he called it practical atheism. And we need to make Jesus our Lord and Savior. I'm like, all right, so far, it's only been a few hours, a few days, but that sounds like a step in the right direction.
Definitely. Switching gears a little bit, back here in Washington, the president is about to take his first international trip. He is skipping over our North American allies altogether and heading straight to the Mideast. What is the strategy here, and what does he need to accomplish? Raj?
Well, I think the big question is the talks in Saudi Arabia going to lead to some sort of resolution to the Israeli Hamas problem? I know there's some people with some fingers crossed that there could be something opening up with the Abraham Accords. I don't think that'll happen right now, but who knows? The Middle East is always changing, and obviously the discussion about what's going on with Iran. The Middle East is unpredictable. Trump's unpredictable. So this whole thing, people say, what's going to happen? As David just said about the last question, who knows? There's just a lot of things on the table that we can definitely talk about.
Well, I can tell you one thing that's going to happen for sure. They're going to present it with some sort of sword or something along those lines. Look, I got to tell you, the last time I went to Saudi Arabia with the president last time, and it was like a king's feast, if you will. He loves it over there, and he has a lot of business dealings pre-president that he had in Saudi Arabia. But look, I think you're going to see a lot of trade deals go down, not just trade deals, but business deals, arms deals, those type of things. I think that'll be important going forward. We'll see. There's, like Raj says, who the heck knows? He's Trump, so we don't know. I'll get back to you in a week and a half.
He's basically just going for the food, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, the administration is sending mixed signals on the future of Iran's nuclear program, with the Vice President and Secretary of State saying under no circumstances can Iran enrich uranium. The president saying, we'll see. What do you think the perfect deal looks like? David?
The perfect deal. Well, I guess Donald Trump will be the only one that knows what the perfect deal is. But I get ultimately what the perfect deal has to include is that Iran stops making nuclear weapons and actually doesn't obviously use them or have them specifically. So I guess that would be part of the perfect deal. But look, I think ultimately this is from John Lennon's playbook of give peace a chance. I guess President Trump is trying to look at it that way. And this is why folks like Mike Walls, the former national security advisor, is out, because he was more of a hawk when it came to this. Like, let's go get Iran. Netanyahu, same way. Let's go get Iran. Trump's not there. That's not where he's at right now. And so that was part of the reason that Walls is out. And Netanyahu right now seems to be kind of a little bit on the outs with Trump.
Well, doesn't...
And, I did a video yesterday with Chris Mitchell where we talked about what Trump said on a radio show recently. I think it's just important. He said, well, we can either, talking about Iran's nuclear facilities, we can either blow them up nicely or blow them up viciously. So you take that for what it means. I think that's Trump basically putting on the cards on the table before he goes over to the area.
We'll see what happens. Dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters here in the U.S. were arrested at Columbia University this week. The administration is trying to crack down on what they call anti-Semitic protests by rescinding student visas and withholding funding for the schools. People on the other side of the issue say that response is an attack on free speech. Where do you anticipate that this is all headed? Raj, we can start with you on this one.
Well, I think I talked to a student at Columbia University yesterday, and he actually was encouraged that Columbia has kind of shifted their policy so that basically, as you said, they stormed this library, then they locked down the library, forcing everyone to show their ID card. So you can't just become this anonymous keffiyeh wearing sunglass nobody. If you're going to do this, if you're going to disrupt the library during finals week, I might add, there will be consequences. So you can see that, top down, this whole Trump pressure is starting to make changes at places like Columbia. So you're starting to see, I think, positive movement on actual, tangible, physical things that are going to be done to clamp this kind of crazy town talk. When it comes to like protests and stuff like that, that's where it gets dicey. People, oh, this is free speech, it's not free speech. But I think this like egregious, just disrupting people and causing violence, people were injured in this thing, that has to stop.
Yeah, I would just echo all of that and just simply say, Caitlin, that look, there's a difference between words and action. In other words, free speech, knock yourself out, do what you need to do, even if you're off your rocker. Having said that, if you're starting to disrupt classes and actually can't let students go into class or blockades X, Y, and Z, that's not free speech. That's illegal. And so there's a big difference. But Congress is looking at changing some of this, but there's controversy in Congress too, because once again, along those free speech lines, how much is free speech and how much is a crackdown?
All right, real quick here, David. Congress has been working to pass an anti-Semitism bill, but is facing roadblocks from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. With at least one Republican worried that some of the language would keep Christians from saying Jews were responsible for the death of Christ. How do lawmakers come together on this?
I don't know if they're going to, Caitlin. I'll just be quickly on this. I don't think they are. That anti-Zionist language, if you will, some are concerned that it goes too far in terms of adopting certain rules and restrictions on it. So we'll see.
All right. Coming up next, he's back. What former President Biden has to say about the election, our political panel weighs in after the break.
At his Trump's cabinet meeting last week, your name was invoked 52 times, and he blamed you for the economic mess that his tariffs are causing. Why is he so fixated on you and blaming you for everything?
I beat him.
That was former President Joe Biden. He and former First Lady Jill Biden went on ABC's The View this week. They talked about his assessment of how President Trump is doing and how he viewed his former Vice President Kamala Harris's election loss. David, Nathan, what do you make of this comeback and why now?
Nathan?
I think when you're in the spotlight, it's tough to be out of it, and you want to try to remain relevant. I think the Bidens also think that they have something to prove. to state their side, make their case for what they did and what they didn't do. But I'm just not sure it's particularly relevant at this point. The Democratic Party moved on. And so it's not, I know what he's trying to do, but I don't think that we're going to be hearing a lot more about Biden, into the future.
Yeah, I don't think it's relevant. I also don't think it's helpful to him. I mean, if he's trying to kind of secure the legacy in the short term, to do rambling interviews, and that's what they were. I mean, the BBC interview was pretty bad. Going on The View is obviously friendly territory, but there were non-answers. I mean, for example, he was asked about his mental acuity, and basically, these books are coming out talking about everybody inside the White House saying, "You guys knew all about it," and he's like, "No, it's just not true." And then he just went on to ramble about something else, and Jill Biden had to step in. So I don't know. It's just not helpful at all.
You mentioned the books coming out. Some of them are expected to allege a cover-up of former President Biden's mental decline. He says that presidential debate between he and Trump was, quote, a terrible night, but that he was able to do the job. Do you have a sense of what exactly is about to be published?
Well, I don't know, Nathan.
I don't, but I think it's
good, Nathan.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I mean, it's not going to be good, I think, for Biden. And as David said, that any time spent talking about Biden or Biden talking is not going to be good for the Democratic Party, right? They want to move on, and in a sense, they did move on. I mean, there's going to be a discussion about what people did and didn't know, but the Democratic Party collectively realized that he was not up for the job of being a candidate, and they pushed him out of the race. And so there was some acknowledgement that he was not running at 100% last year.
And I think that's going to be the overall gist of these books. I mean, obviously, there are going to be specific nuggets that people will latch onto, but just this idea that inside the White House, they knew and they didn't do anything about it. I think that's the overarching part of it. What I find is interesting, and I think Alex Thompson is one of the folks writing the book, but Jake Tapper is the other one. It's kind of rich. Jake Tapper was someone that really didn't press this issue at all, and now he's writing a book about it. I'm not sure if it's a cathartic exercise for him or what, but the media was complicit in this, and I don't think there's any question about it. It's one of the biggest cover-ups in American history.
Well, speaking of Democrats acknowledging what did not work, they lost badly on the issue of immigration in the last presidential election. This week, Axios reported Democrats are now being advised they need to overhaul their agenda and drop the longtime message of comprehensive immigration reform after Biden's failure to control the border. Where would that leave their border strategy?
Well,
I don't think it's clear. I don't think there is a clear Democratic strategy on the border right now. But what's interesting is that President Trump's approval rating on the border specifically, he gets high marks, right? Because the number of illegal crossings has dramatically dropped, but his overall approval rating on immigration is falling. And so I think there is some nuance there that immigration, which was one of President Trump's strongest points, is one of the issues that is driving his overall decline in his job approval rating.
Part of the problem for Democrats is that you can get the messaging right, and the message, if you will, but if you don't really believe it, ultimately you'll be found out by the American people. And see, the thing with Trump with immigration is he really believes it. I mean, he said he was going to do this, all of the stuff in terms of going around the interior of the country and getting folks out, and at the border, of course. And he's doing it. But the Democrats, I mean, they can try to sell a message, but if they don't really believe it, I don't think it's really going to work.
Next week, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments on birthright citizenship. There are 3 cases challenging Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship for some children born in the U.S. This could have pretty drastic implications. Talk to us about how this could play out politically for the president. Nathan?
Well, the president is running against a century of court cases, and I think what has largely been settled constitutional law, but the president is pushing the agenda because he believes that this is something that isn't right. If we go by precedent, I don't think that his what he thinks about birthright citizenship, that his take is going to be the one that's going to prevail, but we'll see. Precedents are sometimes broken, and I think what is concerning among some folks is that he will take that, and how would he enforce that? And
Right.
Because There are concerns about how he's enforcing other laws right now around the country.
All right, bringing back the whole panel. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we are going to be right back after this break. He's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and the man Trump asked to open his cabinet meeting in prayer. Scott Turner shares how his faith is helping drive his mission next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. Scott Turner is the new Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. He's focused on reducing homelessness and building more affordable housing for Americans nationwide. He's also a man of faith. Senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright recently spoke with Turner about his work and his hope for America.
Father, we thank you for this awesome privilege, Father, to be in your presence.
For many Americans, their first introduction to Scott Turner came in February when President Trump asked him to open the first cabinet meeting in prayer. I caught up with him at Our Calling, a faith-based outreach for the homeless in his hometown of Dallas, Texas.
What's the purpose and vision of HUD?
HUD's mission is to serve the most vulnerable people in our country. We meet people right where they are. Housing is not political. Housing is not Republican, it's not Democrat. It impacts every individual and every family in America, and I love that. And so we are mission-minded at HUD to serve those that we've been called to serve, not only in housing, but in homelessness, in disaster recovery. And our mission is not to grow the amount of people that are on government subsidies, but to take people off of government subsidies, to help them get skills and workforce so that their life can be on a trajectory to where they are self-sustaining.
On the homeless crisis, Turner tells CBN News that government is not the answer and should play the role of facilitator to nonprofit organizations like Our Calling to help solve the problem.
There's an 18% increase in homelessness in our country right now. We want to decrease that. We want to eradicate homelessness. We want to help people not only get on their feet, but live life of sustainability.
And according to Secretary Turner, providing shelter is not enough.
When you think about homelessness, a lot of times people think about the shelter, which it is, but it's so much more. We want to look at it from a holistic standpoint. What about the mental health issues? What's the root of homelessness? What about addiction services? And so not only is it the shelter, but it's also how do we help people not only get off the streets, but to get rehabilitated, to get treated? What about the faith issue? What about the family issue? And not just to stay in a homeless shelter, but to help them to be on a trajectory of self-sustainability.
That takes a lot of effort. And in this economy right now, we have DOGE operating. What aspects have you done in launching a task force on DOGE to find the waste, fraud, and abuse so that you can deal with that and then be able to free up your staff and your agency to deal with homelessness?
At HUD, we're identifying waste, fraud, and abuse. For that $1.9 billion, for instance, we de-obligated that and sent it back to the Treasury so it can be used for other federal expenditures, if you will, to serve the American people. And so we have a great working relationship. We want to be stewards, faithful stewards of taxpayer dollars at HUD.
In order to do that, Turner believes in fulfilling President Trump's agenda of deregulation.
Regulations have hindered and crippled the housing affordability issue we have in our country. There's so many barriers to building affordable housing. And so we want to reduce the amount of regulations, both from a federal standpoint and from a state and local standpoint, to unleash the creativity, to unleash the capital, to unleash the ingenuity of private developers around our country.
Beyond removing regulations, Turner is working together with Interior Secretary Doug Burgum on a task force to find more federal land that can be used to develop affordable housing.
Now, this doesn't mean building on our beautiful national parks. There's about 400 million plus acres of underutilized federal lands that we're identified and looking at to where we can help with the housing affordability crisis and the lack of affordable housing. We need about 7 million units of housing in our country.
That's substantial.
And so we're being very creative under the president's leadership.
Under President Trump's first term in office, Turner was chosen to lead the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council.
Opportunity zones. that was something that was always near and dear to you and the president during his previous administration. Is that still one of your priorities now?
It absolutely is. The expansion and the continuation of opportunity zones is very important. Opportunity zones over the last 5 years, since their inception, have realized about $84 billion in capital investments and private money investments inside of opportunity zones. One stat that I really love is 1 million people were lifted out of poverty inside of opportunity zones.
Secretary Turner knows the value of teamwork between government and private entities. Before coming to Washington, he served 2 terms in the Texas legislature, played 9 seasons in the NFL, and held the role of associate pastor at Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas. His faith is also openly displayed on the homepage of HUD's website with his statement, "God blessed us with this great nation, and together we can increase self-sufficiency and empower Americans to climb the economic ladder toward a brighter future."
I want to thank you for the opportunity of being able to talk to us at CBN News. My final question for you, what is your hope for America, and how does your faith in God propel you to show that hope to Americans?
You know, the Bible says, blessed is a nation whose God is the Lord. And my hope is that we all recognize the sovereignty of Christ. We all recognize the blessings of God, the grace of God, and that we live in the greatest country on earth, and that it is our responsibility to give him honor and praise and reverence, and also to steward well over this great country.
Kelly Wright.
Still to come on Faith Nation, a nod from the current First Lady to a woman who held the title in a different time. Tonight, a special honor from one First Lady to another. This week at the White House, Melania Trump and members of the Bush family gathered to unveil a U.S. postage stamp bearing the image of former First Lady Barbara Bush. The image on this stamp is Bush's official White House portrait, which also hangs in the entrance to the West Wing. Melania commended Barbara for championing literacy and inspiring people to pursue their dreams. Barbara Bush died in 2018 when she was 92 years old. The stamp will go on sale in Kennebunkport, Maine on June 10th. That's going to do it for Faith Nation. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.